Office in the United Kingdom has. I fear greatly the situation, as indeed no doubt Harry and Meghan do, the fact that if they were to arrive in the UK and have only private sector provision, I fear the outcome quite considerably.
So Richard, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so excited to get your perspective and knowledge and kind of break down what is kind of going on between Prince Harry and, the security and everything else that is going on. So before we get started, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and your role?
Of course. I spent the best part of 30 years conducting close protection, the management of operations throughout the world, 60 countries throughout 6 continents. I was trained by the Royal Military Police Close Protection Unit in 1996. I spent 7 years protecting ambassadors, senior military generals and special envoys. I then left and went straight into the private sector, providing close protection to celebrities and high-level business people, and I remain to do that to the day. So I'm currently Director of Operations for my company Mobius International, and our unique delivery of service is to provide a government level of provision to the private sector. So we only employ former members of government protection units such as the police and military close protection for our operations.
Wow. It's quite the resume. And this is no joke. That's amazing. All right. So let's kind of break down, if you can help me break down this legal dispute between the British government over the decision not to let Prince Harry pay for police protection. So what does this mean?
It's a very difficult situation that the Home Office in the United Kingdom has. It's unprecedented. With the exception of aligned examples such as Princess Diana, for example, unlike Harry, she refused police protection, and then security was provided to her by the private sector as a result of her relationship with Dodi Fayed. So what we have here is a senior member of the royal family who has relinquished his royal duties, and as such has moved over to the United States to live with Meghan. Now, the security situation for him is compounded by so many differing aspects. The UK government has got a very difficult situation on their hands insofar as many questions need to be answered. Due to the unprecedented situation with Harry, there is no manual or template to work from. Members of the Home Office, Police Protection Command, and also palace officials come together as a form of committee, which is called the Royal and VIP Executive Committee. And this committee decides on who receives protection by the police, and if they do receive it, what capacity does that appear? So their responsibility is to make a determination on security provision to members of Parliament, such as the Prime Minister, the Foreign Office Minister, the Home Secretary, and so on, in addition to members of the royal family. Now, not all members of the royal family receive protection. Most of them do not. And it's only really those senior members of the royal family that receive protection, of which Harry was one. So when Harry was relinquished his royal duties, he goes over to the States. That move in itself compounds greatly on the question of whether he receives ongoing police protection or not. Now, what the UK government has decided to do is to remove protection, or what it appears to be, is to remove his protection in its entirety. And what I mean by that is, I don't just solely mean by the personal protection officers that he normally has, but the full scope of the protective effort as a whole, which involves intelligence flows from diverse agencies that incorporate a protection plan that the provision of that security is based. So an assessment is made during provision of security to any person who wishes to have it. And that assessment is based on intelligence that you have that's gathered from a wide source of amount of information. And with Harry, we have a situation where 1 minute he has provided the full scope of UK police protection, and the next minute he's gone from that to absolutely nothing. So the UK government have provided reasonings based on 3 or 4 main fundamental key points. One of them is the fact that he has relinquished his royal duties and therefore he's not entitled anymore to police protection. At the end of the day, the members of the royal family provide a service to the people. They have royal duties to undertake, and by virtue of that, the UK taxpayer then funds the protection for that service. Now, when you have Harry that has relinquished his royal duties, he no longer provides a service to the UK people.
Right.
And therefore, in the eyes of the government, the question is, why then should the UK taxpayer pay and fund his personal security? Because Harry is no longer providing a service to the UK. Mm-hmm. And that is fully understandable. However, the subject of cost shouldn't be focused on whether Harry provides a service to the people or not alone. By virtue of the fact he is a senior member of the royal family, mm-hmm. he is exposed to a wide variety of serious threats, and the risks to those threats are have increased since his departure from the royal family. The fact he no longer receives police protection, his risk to threats have certainly spiked. Now, when you make a comparison between Prince Harry and other members of the royal family who don't receive protection, here you have Harry, who has served 2 tours in Afghanistan. He is a very high-profile member of the royal family, and he is somewhat developed a band of people who would take offence to his actions from departing the royal family and moving over to the States. So all of this collective actions have resulted in an increased risk to those threats that were already present. So cost alone shouldn't be based solely on the fact of his role within the family and the taxpayer funded for that service. Besides the fact that Harry has now removed that argument in its entirety, he's offered to pay police protection. So the UK government can't turn around and say the UK taxpayer isn't actually now going to fund this because you're no longer providing a service to the people. Harry has offered to pay for it as an entirety. So it's removed that reason for the UK government has. Now, there are 3 other key fundamentals here that the UK government are using. One is role, one is risk, and one is the fact that there's insufficient numbers of suitably trained protection officers to provide protection to him. So role and risk. Harry's role, although he's relinquished his royal duties, his role is still a member of the royal family. He is and always will be a senior member of the royal family. And by virtue of that fact alone, he should receive police protection, dependent on what he's doing, his activity, and where he is in the world. I would have preferred to have seen a response by Protection Command in the delivery of protection in terms of providing an oversight to the private sector provision. To have a member of Protection Command that oversaw the delivery of that private sector provision in terms of numbers of manpower, vehicles, and also to keep that point in terms of intelligence flows. Now, I can only speculate in terms of if the UK security services came over to some intelligence that directly affected the life of Prince Harry, and whether or not Protection Command would actually pass that intelligence on, or indeed whether the security services would actually pass that on to our UK Protection Command anyway. I can sit here and speculate forever about what will happen in such a situation, and one would like to believe that should our security services detect any intelligence that would suggest there is an increased threat and risk to Harry, then I would like to see Protection Command actually intervene the private sector provision and deal with that situation there and then. At the moment, what we hear is the fact that the UK government is turning around and totally disconnecting themselves from any level of provision whatsoever. And that started from day one, the moment that Harry had gone over to the States and received private sector company. So the terms of, in terms of cost and his role, those arguments don't really balance well with the current situation. In terms of risk, there's an argument that the government says that now he's no longer a member of the royal family, his risk is now lowered. And I would actually argue, on the contrary, it has actually increased by virtue of the fact you have removed police protection from him. So his risk on the ground is increased exponentially in comparison. You can't, especially in the UK, you cannot make a comparison between a government provision close protection and that of the private sector. Here in the UK, the private security industry is regulated by a security industry authority, and they work on behalf of the Home Office. And for close protection in the private sector specifically, they have imposed a certain level of licensing and training standards since 2006. Now, anyone who wishes to conduct close protection in the private sector attends a 2-week course, at the end of which they are handed a license, a UK government recognised license, to enable them to perform legally close protection on the ground in the UK. And of course, the course is unfit for purpose, because not only is it UK remit only, so therefore there's no high risk environment training whatsoever, the actual content and duration of the course is unfit for purpose. So when you're to make a comparison between the private sector in the UK and that of the government-led provision, there is no comparison whatsoever. And we're not just discussing the differences between manpower from the government police protection provision and that of the private sector. If Harry came over to the UK and he received private sector only security, that security is compounded by not only the lack of competence and performance on the ground generally by those individuals, but also the fact that you don't have the usual intelligence flows. But on top of that, which is probably the most influential aspect over all of them, is the fact that they don't have the law on their side. So police provision of protection to someone in the UK, because they have the power.
If you want to sell online, make sure you stand out. Go to Wix e-commerce and create a professional online store that will grab shoppers' attention. Build a state-of-the-art storefront and make it your own. Showcase your products with striking product pages and sell subscriptions. You can practically smell the beans. Go global and display prices in local currencies. Want to boost your sales? Grab a coffee and chat with your customers to offer product advice and send instant coupons. Streamline your checkout process with automated shipping fees and sales tax calculations. If a customer leaves items behind, remind them to complete their purchase with an abandoned cart recovery email. As orders come in, manage your inventory and track your sales from one convenient dashboard. Analyze your comprehensive sales and traffic reports or build your own. Check out these and more must-have e-commerce features for sellers who mean business. Go to Wix e-commerce and create your online store today.
Power of the law, they can create sterile and secure areas. They can prevent access by the civilians on the ground at venues. They can control traffic flow, and they can go whatever speed they like. They can stop traffic. I mean, just this in itself reduces the risk to threat quite considerably.
Right. Well,
so,
go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So when you have a private sector provision, they are susceptible to all of these aspects that are detriment to security of protecting a person. So if Harry is to walk through the streets of London, as an example, and he has a paparazzi approaching him, he has unknown people approaching him with their cameras and they're in his face, they're standing in front of him, preventing him from moving. His security they cannot tell anyone what to do. They can ask them, would you mind getting out of the way, please, madam? They can't tell them, they can't instruct them what to do. And yet you're to make a comparison with the police protection provision, of course they can actually tell them to get out of the way. They can stop the traffic, then they can get from point A to point B without any undue risk. So the special escort group, for example, that provide the security transportation moves from A to B around the UK, they allow the vehicles, the convoys, the VIP vehicles to move from point A to point B without stopping. And when you actually consider London, you have huge amount of traffic, you have junctions, traffic lights, pedestrians, the whole aspect of traffic hassle on the roads in London is none of that at all. And even though the vehicles are probably only travelling 25, 30 miles an hour, the vehicles are moving continually at no risk. Yeah. So making a comparison between private sector and government provision on the UK, there is no comparison. And I fear greatly the situation, as indeed no doubt Harry and Meghan do, the fact that if they were to arrive in the UK and have only private sector provision, I fear the outcome quite considerably.
Yeah, I mean...
You want your videos to look amazing, right? Part of that is shooting it correctly. But you know what a lot of people don't?